Okay, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. In the name of God, the infinitely good, the most merciful. Welcome to Oxfordshire's third multi-faith virtual prayer. We are joined this evening by Mr. Tim Stevenson, OBE, Her Majesty's Lord Lieutenant for Oxfordshire, Councillor Craig Simmons, Lord Mayor of Oxford, the Right Reverend Bishop Colin Fletcher, Bishop of Dorchester, Penny Faust from the Jewish community, Jawaid Malik from the Muslim community, Dr. Rabindra Chakraborty from the Hindu community, Singh Sandhu from the Sikh community, Prajnaketu from the Buddhist community, and Esmyr Koomen from the Baha'i community. Lord Lieutenant, Lord Mayor, faith leaders and representatives, attendees and our guests, peace be upon you all. Thank you to all of you for joining us and making this possible. May I take this opportunity to wish the Muslim community Ramadan Kareem. I pray that we will have a blessed Ramadan, even in circumstances that are so trying. The practice of fasting has existed in many of the world's religious traditions. To fast is to develop human traits of self-restraint, empathy, and a deeper connection with the transcendent. The act of fasting is not just to go without sustenance, but it is to transform the person. The Sufis speaking of the fast of the limbs, Sufis speak of the fast of the limbs, especially the hand and the tongue, that even when one is angered, that one deploys both the tongue and the hand in a manner of forgiveness, compassion and love, exercising self-restraint and courtesy. I am always struck by the effect that hunger has on one's empathy with people who might be living in difficult circumstances. It becomes a catalyst to greater charitable giving and supporting of the most vulnerable in our society. Last week, the 21st April, marked a month of our being in lockdown. Though this has been an exceptionally difficult time, it has also been the moment in our nation's history when the spirit of public duty and service has shone brightly across the United Kingdom, for which we send our gratitude and thanks to all involved in whatever capacity in our communities.
I'd like to begin with a brief extract from The Living Flame of Love by the 16th century mystic, St. John of the Cross. Keep your heart in peace. Let nothing in this world disturb it. All things have an end. In all circumstances, however hard they may be, we should rejoice rather than be cast down, that we may not lose the greatest good, the peace and tranquility of our soul. If the whole world and all that is in it were thrown into confusion, disquietude on that account would be vanity, because that disquietude would do more harm than good. To endure all things with a steady and peaceful mind not only brings with it many blessings to the soul, but also enables us in the midst of our difficulties to have a clear judgment about them and to supply the fitting remedy for them. Well, the whole of our world has indeed been thrown into confusion. St. John's prescription for managing ourselves through that confusion of a global, national and local crisis is indeed a demanding task for all of us. The psychological strain of the serious lockdown restrictions on our daily lives is for most of us building as the weeks go by. As this happens, the need for steady and peaceful minds, for tolerance, for courtesy and empathy within our families and communities becomes ever more important. All of us will be endeavoring in our own ways to stay positive and understanding of the strains that are being imposed on others, many in a far worse position than we're in ourselves. We must celebrate and sustain the empathy that lies behind the upwelling of a sense of community, of understanding, of looking out for others, in particular of supporting those most at risk. That is the overarching characteristic of our community response to the crisis. I'd like to finish with a shortened version of the wonderful prayer of St. Francis of Assisi. Lord, make me an instrument of thy peace. Grant that I may seek not so much to be consoled as to console, to be understood as to understand, to be loved as to love. For it is in giving that we receive, it is in pardoning that we are pardoned, it is in dying that we are born to eternal life.
So last week I visited one of the 5 hubs that have been set up across the city to distribute food and medicine to those unable to access these essential items themselves. What struck me most was the empathy and care shown by staff well above and beyond the call of duty. The time taken to phone up and talk to people who are missing out on social contact, whether it's lingering around a safe distance from their front doors after packages have been delivered, to check that everything was okay, providing a card and a cake, to help celebrate a birthday in lockdown. And the fact that slipped into each food parcel was a short poem from a selection kindly provided by the Oxford Poetry Library. These were food parcels that also nourished the soul. I want to read to you one of those poems I think speaks to the theme of today's service. It is called Compassion and written by Sarah Quinn, who's actually a nursing student at Oxford Brookes University. We are here for you 24/7 in your darkest, most vulnerable and weakest moments. We are the holding of a hand to show you we are here through it all. We are people who make porridge at 4 a.m. for that 8-year-old boy whose beloved granddad just died and was in need of distraction. We're the first people you see when you wake up after surgery and tell you it is all went well. We are the ears who listen to that 90-year-old lady recite from memory her favourite poem perfectly because no family comes to visit. We're the eyes you show your wounds to, which we dress without batting an eyelid. We are the assistants who help you learn to walk again, who motivate you to try again after failing. We're the people who make you a cup of tea after you find out the child you were carrying will never be born alive. We're the carers who shave you when you can't, so you look smart for your wife, even in your hospital bed. We're the staff who learn to sign their name so they can communicate in a way you understand. We are the staff that turn up every day and see so much. In this never-ending battle, we still try. A little compassion goes further than you may ever know. We are the NHS.
Before I say anything else, may I say a huge thank you to Monawar for organising these multi-faith virtual prayers, not least today's, as it does fall in the midst of Ramadan. Empathy, courtesy and self-restraint, the themes of our service today, are, I suspect, all virtues that we appreciate when they're shown by others in their relationships with us. Certainly, as we've just heard, they are ones being demonstrated in abundance all over Oxfordshire at present. And I've been thrilled to hear the stories of our communities coming together all over the county to care for one another in all kinds of practical pastoral ways in recent weeks. It has been rightly pointed out on many occasions that the aptly named golden rule of doing to others what we would have them do to ourselves is at the core of the ethics of most of our religions. Jesus himself said this in his Sermon on the Mount, reflecting the teaching of the scriptures he had internalized so deeply from his youth. In everything, he said, do to others what you would have them do to you, for this sums up the law and the prophets. Those same values, I feel, are reflected in a prayer drawn to my attention this week, written by a colleague of mine as she reflected on the coronavirus crisis. In these days when all should be well, feels at odds with grievous reality. God be with us. In these days when enormity becomes a distraction and small things can claim our focus, God be with us. In these days when our inner solitude is too loud and outside is unnervingly quiet, God be with us. In these days when our fear contracts us and stretches our hope, God be with us. In these days when routines are snatched from us and we drift from our groove, help us to know how shallow was the groove of habit and how the drift is towards the center. In these days when we extend our distance from others, help us to know how tensile are the invisible ties that bind. In these days when inequalities unleash their deadly effects, help us to know that God loves justice and that it will prevail. In these days when activity is frenetic, uncomfortable, or unavailable, help us to know that the God who dwells in us does the work. Amen.
This evening, I'd like to look more closely at that golden rule, you shall love your neighbour as yourself. And I'd like to take it from a slightly different perspective. It first appeared in those specific words in the book of Leviticus in the Jewish scriptures, but it's a teaching that's at the core of most faiths. If it were generally obeyed, it would guarantee the survival of humanity. Hillel, one of our rabbis from ancient times, interpreted it as, what is hateful to you, do not do to your fellow. In modern terms, do as you would be done by. However, it's much more than this. You shall love your neighbour as yourself requires that in order to love our neighbours, we have first to love ourselves. And that means accepting who we are. It implies understanding our own strengths and limitations and using them to fulfill our potential. Not being undermined by our mistakes, but learning from them. And perhaps most difficult of all, it means understanding that we're not perfect, but also knowing that the most important thing is that we try. And as we achieve that knowledge of ourselves, we can begin to understand and love other people, to put tolerance, empathy, and respect for others before mistrust and hostility, to accept and even revel in our differences, not to expect that everyone be the same, to see the rich variety of faiths and nationalities, cultures and traditions in our society as a strength, not a weakness, and to recognize that they are all, in their own way, containers of the truth. It's not easy, but as my wonderful Polish grandmother used to say, whoever told you that life was going to be easy? My hope is that we can use this period of lockdown positively, to teach ourselves not to get irritated by the behavior of other people, but to recognize that the reality of lockdown affects us all in different ways. That we should try not only to be tolerant and always courteous in our dealings with others, but also, if we can, make the most of the opportunities for reflection and perhaps changing ourselves that this time in lockdown may offer us. A short prayer. Eternal One, we stand in awe before you, impelled by visions of the harmony of humankind. We are children of many traditions, inheritors of shared wisdom and tragic misunderstandings, of proud hopes and humble successes. Now it is time for us to live together in memory and in truth, in courage and trust, in love and promise. In that which we share, let us see the common prayer of humanity. In that which we differ, let us wonder at the freedom of humankind. In our unity and in our differences, let us know the uniqueness that is God. Amen.
In the name of Allah, the most kind, the most merciful. The momentous month of Ramadan has just started, an incredibly special and deeply spiritual month. At a moment when so many people around the world are suffering, Ramadan reminds us of our common obligations to pursue justice and peace and to uphold the dignity of every human being, regardless of faith or background. The holy month of Ramadan is a very distinct time when the Muslim community traditionally engages in uplifting spiritual sacraments that include special communal prayers and the sharing of iftar meal, a break in the fast time, with family, friends, and wider community members. While communal prayers and services are suspended at mosques due to COVID-19, it provides us with an excellent opportunity to spend more time in reflection and with our loved ones at home. Fasting instills the qualities of empathy and compassion towards those who are less fortunate than ourselves and who may be suffering because of poverty, famine, or inequality. Empathy requires us to look into our own hearts, discover what gives us pain, and refrain from inflicting that pain on anybody else. The privation of important characteristics of compassion and selflessness is perhaps a consequence of the rampaging materialism that may have taken over our lives and compels us to succumb to the desires of our soul, plunging us into it provides an exceptional opportunity to refine our character and tame our soul by purifying it from bad characteristics such as arrogance, selfishness, dishonesty, and intolerance, and increase it with praiseworthy and good characteristics. Now a short prayer. O Lord, the bestower of all good and blessings, and the responder to our prayers, all success lies with you. We seek your mercy and blessings. O Lord of the universe, enlighten our hearts with the blessings of Ramadan. Grant us the wisdom and forbearance in these difficult times and help us to reach out to those who need help. Bless our NHS staff, the emergency services, the frontline workers, and all those who are striving to provide a service to your creation. O merciful of the merciful, hear our pleas. You are all hearing, all knowing. Amen.
Horo rogum, horo klesham, horo khobham, horo ashubham, horo shokuncha darunam. O Lord, remove our disease, pains, anxieties, all evils around us, and our terrible grief. Horo daridram, horo bandhu sajana boiraggam, horo sarvodurgotim. O Lord, remove our poverty, pain of separation from friends and relatives, and all our miseries. Ayud dehi, shastham dehi, dehi aroggam, dhurjam dehi, dehi atta samyamam. Give us long life, give sound health, cure from disease, patience, and self-restraint. Dehi paradukho anubhava shaktim, dehi vinayam, dehi shuddha gyanam, dehi amritam mrityupatha jatrinam. O Lord, give us sense to feel the grief and sorrow of others, give us courtesy, pure knowledge, and give nectar to the dying ones. Jatasyahi dhruva mrityu, dhrubam janma mritasya cha, tasmat apariharya arthe, na tum shoditu mahorshi. Who is born will surely die, and who dies will surely be born. As birth and death are inevitable, we have to accept both. O Lord, in your great universe, nothing is ever lost. Due to our ignorance, we cry for any loss. Your universe, like yourself, is always full. Our blind eyes cannot see this, which is the cause of all our miseries. The fruit dropping on the ground from the tree is not lost, as a new plant grows from it. Our loved ones who are no more with us are actually staying with you, and hence they are not lost.
First of all, I would like to thank Monawar for gathering us all here today. It is wonderful to see a variety of different faiths sitting together, and I would like to express my gratitude to all that are present as we face uncertain and stressful times that affect each and every one of us. We are facing one of the biggest challenges in the history of the modern world, and these themes of self-restraint, empathy, and courtesy are important. And we can use these to guide us to establishing some peace, tranquility, and hope in our lives during this chaotic period for our communities. If we can just take a step back and ask ourselves, what can we do to control and restrain ourselves in the situation that we currently find ourselves in? One way in which we can exercise self-restraint is by taking a stand against the temptations of going out for unnecessary causes, of meeting people outside our homes, and continuing our lives like normal. We mustn't give in to what our minds want. We can show empathy by listening and understanding to our government and to those experts who have spent decades committing their lives to the health and medicine industry. Our courtesy can be expressed to those key workers who dedicate most of their time putting themselves at risk by providing for those who are less fortunate and more vulnerable in our society. But we can also do more at home too. Recently, there has been a significant rise in domestic violence cases, and we must do more to show empathy and courtesy to our loved ones, looking after their health, as well as restraining ourselves in times of anger and distress. Our first teacher, Guru Nanak, said, "Dukhudaru sukha rog paya," which translates to, "It is strange that very often pain and suffering act as its own cure and can make us remember God, because in times of happiness we can forget God." I know myself, as well as many of my friends, are trying to adjust to such difficult circumstances, but reflecting on these three themes can help us overcome these challenging times through treating one another with more respect. I would like to finish off with how we finish our prayers every day when we say, Nanak Naam Jardi Kala, Tere Pane Sadapat Tabla, which means we pray for the whole of humanity to be blessed with the name of God, and may everyone prosper under his will. May God bless us all.
So self-restraint probably isn't a particularly popular idea at the moment. We relish our freedoms, and we can be grateful for the political, religious and social freedoms that we continue to enjoy, even in these times of lockdown. But these kind of freedoms aren't the last word as far as the Buddha's teachings are concerned. As well as there being freedom to do certain things, the Buddha makes a particular point of emphasizing freedom from selfish, contracted, negative states of mind, particularly those of greed, hatred, and delusion. Now, this kind of freedom doesn't come from political action or legal action. Freedom from is essentially a matter of training our own minds. The main way this training appears in Buddhism is in the teaching of the 5 ethical precepts. Trainings in the principle of undertaking to refrain from destroying life, taking the not given, from sexual misconduct, from falsehood, and from intoxication. These 5 are the characteristic ways in which a selfish mind plays out. And by refraining from these acts, we loosen the grip that greed, hatred, and delusion have over our minds. I want to say just a couple of things about these precepts, and these probably apply to most of the spiritual teachings that we've been hearing today too. So first, these precepts are not to be approached legalistically. By that I mean we shouldn't be looking for clever loopholes or get-arounds. For example, asking, does it count if I get someone else to kill my dinner for me? If it's a selfish act and we're acting on the basis of a selfish motivation, that will just inculcate in us further selfish characteristics. There isn't a kind of get around, there isn't a loophole there. Second, in practicing these precepts, we're not just looking to maintain the bare standard system requirements of a good Buddhist. In fact, what we're looking to do is to cultivate the opposite qualities. So the qualities of loving kindness, of generosity, of contentment, of truthfulness, and clarity of awareness. These aren't just the qualities of a mind that is free, but the Buddha also describes these qualities as 5 great gifts. Gifts of the freedom from fear, freedom from enmity, and freedom from affliction to all beings we encounter. So these qualities are at the heart of an empathic and courteous response to the world. This begins with us now. In every moment we are choosing to act. In every moment we're choosing between selfish or selfless acts. In every moment we are creating the characters that are our future selves. And importantly, it doesn't matter whether we're in public or whether we're in the privacy of our own touchscreens. Wherever we are and whatever we're doing, we can choose to train our minds in this freedom that the Buddha teaches.
Good evening. Central to living a Baha'i life is seeking to follow the spiritual path. This consists in turning towards God in prayer, contemplation, and a constant endeavour to develop such moral qualities as self-restraint, empathy, and courtesy. Empathy is the ability to put oneself in someone's shoes and understand and feel what they are feeling. Empathetic people have the ability to connect to others on a deeper level, and this can lead to individuals being helpful, involved and invested in other people. In our society, where it's ever more clear we have to rely on each other, empathy is an increasingly important tool to connect with the world. According to neuroscience research, our capacity to develop empathy enhances our capacity for self-restraint. When we turn to prayer and sincerely seek the spiritual capacity to show empathy, the mirror of our heart is illumined by the light of divine love. The Baha'i writings set out a standard of empathy, self-restraint, and courtesy that as Baha'is we strive to achieve. And I will now share some of these helpful Baha'i teachings. Manifest complete love and affection toward all mankind. Know that God is compassionate toward all. Therefore, love all from the depths of your hearts. Be filled with love for every race and be kind toward the people of all nationalities. Do not complain of others. Act in such a way that your heart may be free from hatred and not be offended with anyone. Well is it with those who are illumined with the light of courtesy. Assist the world of humanity as much as possible. Be the source of consolation to every sad one. Assist every weak one. Be helpful to every needy one. And care for every sick one and shelter those who are overwhelmed by fear. And therefore, turn all your thoughts toward bringing joy to hearts. Turn all your thoughts toward bringing joy to hearts. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed for joining us for this virtual multi-faith prayer. Please keep safe and do please look out for those who are vulnerable, self-isolating and lonely in your communities. Through the aid of patience, prayer, love and care for each other, we will get through this. Thank you very much indeed for joining us.